man they just greeted the moment he stepped off the stage, they called him El Booster, Angelo Millones. And even though he's in the middle of the biggest party in the Barbosa project, surrounded by the artists of the moment, he wasn't a singer. He was the man who ran the drug trade in Puerto Rico, the one who controlled these streets, the biggest drug lord of the moment. That night, Hector El Father, Don Omar, and other artists performed in his neighborhood for his people. And everything you saw there, the lights, the stage, the money flying over the crowd, came from one place. The business that made him the most powerful man on the island. His real name was Ángel Ayala Vázquez. He grew up in the José Celso Barbosa housing project in Bayamón, a city right next to San Juan. In Puerto Rico, places like this are called caseríos, neighborhoods of 3-story concrete blocks, public housing where thousands of families grow up with almost nothing. He started selling on the drug corners of that project in the early 90s, very young, at the lowest rung of the business. But something else was happening on those same blocks, because in the projects of Puerto Rico around those years a new sound was being born, a raw mix the radio stations wouldn't touch. It moved on cassettes, hand to hand. It came out of the poorest neighborhoods from kids recording in borrowed rooms with whatever they had. And it came off the same corners where El Booster was learning the drug business. That rhythm didn't have the name yet that would later take it around the world, but it was already playing in the projects of Puerto Rico. Angelo Millones wasn't just another dealer. He saw the business big. Back then, the projects of Bayamón were killing each other over the drug spots. His idea was simple and brutal in its logic. Stop fighting. Join up. He pulled several warring crews under one structure and gave it a name that copied the initials of the actual United Nations on purpose. La ONU, the United Nations of drug traffickers.
Esta es para el pana tuyo. Dile que Puerto Rico 100 por 35 y mandamos nosotros. Atentamente, la ONU.
From there, the operation ran like a business. Cocaine left Colombia, came in through the Dominican Republic, and crossed to the island by sea. One trafficker alone moved thousands of kilos for him. Out of Puerto Rico, the drugs went on to New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Florida. Not just cocaine, crack, heroin, marijuana, pills. And El Booster's business had a rule. He let others sell in their own projects on one condition: they bought the drugs from him. That way he controlled the business without standing on every corner. In the spots that were his, he had iron bars put on the building entrances to slow the police down and protect the sales. The dirty money got cleaned through properties and businesses under other people's names, so nothing showed up as his. At its peak, the organization was moving figures that reached $100 million. And where did some of that money start going? Into the music. Back then, the artists coming up in the projects didn't have big labels behind them. The recordings, the mixtapes, the street parties, all of it got funded by the men who had the money in the neighborhood. Angelo was one of them. The drug money and the sound coming off the street started growing together in the same place at the same time. The lyrics talked about the street, and for a while it was just about the only thing playing in the neighborhoods of Puerto Rico. By then, Angelo Millones was at the top. La ONU controlled the drug trade across much of the island, and his name carried weight far beyond the projects. And at the same time, the sound born in that world was exploding. What the radio wouldn't play before was now everywhere. That sound had a name now: Reggaeton. And it was moving out of Puerto Rico into the rest of the world. On one of his properties, El Booster built his own recording studio. In the projects, music got made in borrowed rooms with whatever was around. He had a place to record it at home. The neighborhood's money didn't just fund the music from the outside anymore. Now it had a place to be recorded. And every December in the Christmas and Three Kings parties that became famous across the island, El Booster paid for free concerts in the project, with the stars from the radio singing right in front of the people from the block. To a lot of people in the projects, he was the man who gave them what the government never did. In a neighborhood the rest of the country looked at from a distance, he showed up and gave back. So the people in the project protected him, and his name started showing up in the music itself. El Booster got mentioned in the songs of the genre. In tracks, the whole island was playing. Years later, Hector El Father, one of the biggest names in the reggaeton of that era, spoke openly about the relationship he'd had with Angelo Millones.
Angelo era mi amigo. Si ustedes supieran que Angelo
Era un hombre que de las personas que más me regañaba.
Around him moved what they called El Combo de Setenta, dozens of kids from the projects tied to that world. Music and the street mixed together with no clear line between the two. The man moving the drugs was also the one who's from the shadows pushed reggaeton in Puerto Rico. But La ONU's power ran on violence, and the people from the block were the ones who paid for it. The corners where reggaeton was being born were the ones the organizations fought over with gunfire, and the heaviest cost fell on the community living around the drug spots. In 2009, a war of revenge between crews spun out of control. In an ambush aimed at Alexis El Loco, a rival trafficker, his 2 children were killed as well, a 2-year-old girl and a 16-year-old. Officially, that order was never pinned on him. But on the streets of Bayamon, nobody had any doubt. To the neighborhood, things like that happened because Angelo Millones allowed them. He was the head. And in his world, nothing that heavy moved without him knowing. And that was the other side of the December parties. On the same streets where he paid for free concerts and handed out help, there were families burying their own. Keeping control of the projects had a price, and the community paid it quietly, year after year. Meanwhile, a federal investigation had spent years following La ONU's trail.
Bien aburrecido, puñeta. Dame las pali, dame las pali. Toma.
By then, Angelo Millones was a high-profile trafficker. He moved too much money and held too much power to stay invisible. And the operation that came to take down La ONU had a name that said it all. They called it Planet Reggae. In the name itself, the government tied the drug trade to the music coming out of those projects. On September 18th, 2009, before dawn, close to 500 federal and state agents moved into the Barbosa project. They had gathered first at a military base nearby, Fort Buchanan. In the end, the case charged 65 people. Angelo Millones was number 1 on the list. His brother, known as El Mono, who helped run the organization, was number 8. Almost all of them pleaded guilty. Ayala and his brother went to trial. To make their case, prosecutors played the video of that party in the project, with Ayala on stage surrounded by artists, and they argued those parties were paid for with drug money as a way to keep control over the projects. Several well-known artists were called to testify before the grand jury. None of them was charged with a crime. When they finished taking the organization apart, they seized what that money had bought. Properties under straw owners, cars, boats, and a Lamborghini worth $250,000. The same car the neighborhood watched roll by. All of it, every luxury, had come dollar by dollar out of one of the poorest places on the island. In April 2011, after a 2-month trial, he was found guilty. The sentence was life in prison. A federal court later called the scale of the operation staggering. Its human cost, the court said, was impossible to measure. Today, El Booster is serving life in prison. He's never getting out. But there was a time when this man from a housing project in Bayamon controlled the 2 things that ruled the streets in Puerto Rico: the drugs and the music. The reggaeton he helped build with dirty money is now heard all over the planet. And almost no one knows that in its early days, the genre that conquered the world was in the hands of one of the most powerful drug lords on the island. A story many on the island would rather forget. Because behind every party, every luxury, and every record, there was a whole neighborhood that paid the price. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the story, hit like and subscribe. This channel is full of stories like this one. See you in the next one.